Well, as you all know, it will cost much more now to register your vehicle in the greater Montreal area. The Montreal metropolitan community voted last week to almost triple vehicle registration from $59 to over $150. And this is the latest chapter in this tug of war between the Legault government and the mayors, especially Montreal Mayor Valerie Plante, on how to finance public transit. We know that the deficits at the SDM and all the other Montreal agencies are growing. Nobody seems to want to make the hard decisions. So the easiest decision, it seems, is to go to who? As usual, us, the taxpayer. To get Montreal opposition reaction, happy to be joined by the mayor of the borough of Pierrefonds-Roxboro. Jim Beis is on the line. Good morning, Jim.
Good morning, David, and thank you for having me again.
Always a pleasure, sir. So before I get into the registration issue, you had at Ensemble Montreal a big convention in Saint Laurent this weekend. How did that go?
Look, the convention was an incredible success. I mean, not only do we have members present, but we have new people that have come on board with us to really seek an alternative to what this administration is doing in Montreal. And you brought it up at the beginning, with what they are proposing in Montreal. We could have talked on a number of issues today on how this administration is completely out of touch with everyday citizens and the reality that we live with day in and day out. And so here we are today.
So here we are indeed. And so, Jim, your reaction, I mean, Pierrefonds-Roxboro, in terms of public transit, I mean, you don't get nearly enough services from the SCM already. What do you think, both as a borough mayor and as an Ensemble Montreal spokesperson on this issue, how do you feel about this decision led by Montreal Mayor Valerie Plante? Now, all the mayors voted for it, both on the North Shore and the South Shore as well, and in Laval. But how do you feel that this is the only possible solution, it seems, to take care of our beleaguered public transit system?
It's ridiculous. Actually, 24 of the 28 mayors voted for. This is another situation where, again, we're downloading the mismanagement and the ability to be able to spend and prioritize the Montreal taxpayers' money accordingly. We can go through a list of expenditures that the City of Montreal and the government, for that matter, is going through that doesn't prioritize everyday residents. There are folks, David, in every community that are struggling day in and day out to make ends meet. Food banks are overflowing at the seams. And here we go once again imposing, not even consulting, but imposing an additional rate. And what's fascinating to me here is that the mayor of Montreal, Valerie Plante, chairs the CMM, which is the Montreal Metropolitan Community. They chair it, and the administration, they are currently holding pre-budget consultations on public transit financing. Why wouldn't they wait, for example, to get the reaction and some of the recommendations before they flat out pass this on to the taxpayer? And on another note, the Minister Guilbeault commissioned already the transport companies to publish in September or by September the information that they need to at least go forward with some type of action plan in order for them to address some of the transport issues. No one is disputing that we need to change our habits because we cannot rely solely on the vehicles. We know this, and we know we try to promote public transit as much as possible. But if I can give you the perspective of my borough, for example, it takes us an hour to get to the nearest metro station.
Incredible.
And not only that, it takes us longer to commute by public transport within my borough of Pierrefonds-Roxboro than it does to go downtown by the train or the eventual train. So certainly there are areas that we need to improve. There's the education, there's the understanding that we have to make sure that happens. But to pass that on to the residents when already we are underwater in terms of a society trying to pay, we have homelessness that's in an increase. Every sphere of society is affected. And meanwhile, the government and the City of Montreal supports the expenditures. And again, I've said it many times and I'll bring it up again, up to $1 billion to repair a roof. when we ask ourselves, is it really the time
Sure.
to be spending that type of money when we have real issues that affect everyday residents?
All right, so let's go from the Olympic Stadium to what Ensemble Montreal would do. Instead of this move by the mayors, led by Valérie Plante, what would you do to fix the financing problem with our mass transit agencies?
Well, the mass transit agency, number one, we've all asked for their reports to make sure that we understand better how they're spending their money. We have to make sure that we provide viable services. When I have a bus in a community that goes by once every hour, that's not going to be attractive enough to be able to get people to use it. When we've been asking in many communities to increase the parking capacity of the REM stations in order for them to have people take their cars to get to the train, we've been refused flat out. When we ask for shuttle services to get people on public transit, certainly that would work to get them to use the train and other means of public transport. We've doubled the bike pass in my community just since we've been there. So certainly we've made those changes. But at the same time, every single time communities like mine, who are highly residential, single-family homes that don't have the density really to respond to the STM or the other transport agencies, reality, they don't give us what we need because we just don't have the ridership, in their view, to be able to justify an additional expense. Certainly we need to trim all aspects of governance. And the STM is another one that unfortunately hasn't been able to get, especially since the pandemic, has been able to get back to where they were once upon a time. But we can't pit the driver against the public transport agency or the active transport agencies and have everybody competing for the same envelope here. You know, you're going to be penalizing drivers. We know the state of Montreal, people aren't going to the city of Montreal anymore. Why aren't they going to the city of Montreal? Because there are other areas that Montreal governance isn't, unfortunately, addressing to the capacity that I believe a second biggest city of Canada, metropolis, is doing the right job. I really think that there is a serious issue with the governance and how we try to get to our, end result by once again attacking and imposing to the everyday resident these, enormous costs. That how are folks going to be able to do that?
Sure. I'm running out of time here, Jim. You mentioned that 24 out of 28 mayors voted for the tax increase. Who are the 4 dissidents?
I don't have the 4 in front of
But
me.
Those are Montreal independent mayors, right?
Well, those are on the CMM.
On the CMM.
On the CMM.
Okay.
The CMM,
an overwhelming majority voted for this increase.
Well, I get, like I told you before, no one is against increasing, ridership on public transport.
Of course.
But certainly we can't do that by penalizing. When I talk about my borough, it's not only my borough, it's the outlying areas. I mean, we can look at the East End, we could look at Montreal North, we could look at Hochelaga-Maisonneuve, we could look at all these other boroughs that unfortunately have challenges in terms of public transport options. So I'm talking for myself now in my borough, but Montreal in general has an issue with providing public transport. And so when you look at the CMM that just flat out does this, how can they do that knowing that people can't pay? Their capacity to pay is very difficult today. And so, look, there's work to be done. My biggest surprise that the City of Montreal, Mayor Plante decided to go ahead with this, knowing that there are still studies in place that will be reporting back to not only the government, the Minister Guilbeault, but also the City of Montreal in terms of the viability of the transport agency as it stands. And so my opinion is, why couldn't we have waited to get some of this information before we just flat out propose this and then agree in majority that this will be imposed as of January 2025? It's absolutely absurd.
All right, Jim. Pleasure as always. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you for having me, David. Be well.
You too. Pierrefonds-Roxboro Borough Mayor and Ensemble Montreal spokesperson on transportation, Jim Beis.